Hi, I'm Mari Herreras, and a little over a month ago, I launched a GoFundMe campaign to help start Tucson's first street newspaper. I did a Zoom info session a bit ago, and technology just wasn't on my side, and neither was time. So I thought I'd recreate that and provide you information on a street newspaper and what we're doing to get there to make this happen. Going back to the GoFundMe, we're at a little over 1,200 right now. Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone who's contributed thus far. I really appreciate it. Share the campaign, share this video if you feel like, torturing friends with this mug. But share the video and help us get more info out there about this project. Okay, so meet the Dry River Press. Kind of like saying it that way. However, let's put it on record, Dry River Press is not the name of this paper. At least maybe it might be, who knows. But we have our first advisory board meeting coming up on August 20th, and we will have a name for you, and we'll let you know what it is. But I like teasing everybody a little bit, so anyway, still telling the stories others miss. That's really not going to be that different. So why are we doing this? What's the purpose, the inspiration? A while back in the early 90s, I lived in Seattle, and I came across a guy selling a paper for a quarter, and the paper was called Real Change. And I bought one because, when you've been a journalist for a long time, you do that. You buy papers, you pick up papers, print papers. And I was so excited to read something new and found out what it was about and found out what he was. He was a vendor selling this street newspaper in Seattle for a quarter. And that paper is still going strong. I volunteered for it back then, wrote a few stories about Seattle policy issues and issues in Washington state and federal issues and how they were going to affect Washington. Back then, that was welfare reform during the Clinton administration. I love aging myself, but it is the truth. It was a wonderful paper. And the last couple of years, I've been thinking a lot about why don't we have a street newspaper in Tucson? We should have a street newspaper in Tucson. We've been through a lot in this community. We're going through a lot. We are a vulnerable city, a vulnerable Sonoran Desert, and I believe we need a street newspaper right now. We know our goals are quality journalism, exceptional investigative reporting. That's what we want to do on the newsroom side of our business. On the other, which is our vendor program, we want to create viable, low barrier employment through our vendor program. And I'm going to explain how that works in a bit. But that's our goal. And I think that Tucson, I think we can make it happen. Why? Why do we need this? Well, we know that Tucson's been through a lot. It's still going through a lot. Before the pandemic, housing costs were going up, not just home sales prices, but rent. And now we're in a position where many people in Tucson who rent are paying close to 50% of their wages towards rent, toward keeping themselves housed. At the same time, we have this other thing going on in Tucson. Since 2018, I believe unhoused have increased up 60%. That's huge. And side by side, both of those things have had repercussions on Tucson that I think we've all felt in different ways. There are also wonderful media platforms that we have in Tucson, but not every one of them will go out of their way to also include affected voices in the storytelling. So if we're writing a story about unhoused community, we're not going to necessarily just go to housing experts that work for the city. We're also going to go to the people on the streets. We know that historically, media and newspapers, newsmaking, it's shrinking. Those outlets are shrinking in different ways. We are lucky in Tucson that we have great reporters and reporting like Tony Davis at the Arizona Daily Star, who broke the Project Blue story, and then online papers like our news outlets like the Tucson Sentinel and, oh man, that great Arizona Luminaria and the Project Blue work they did. Wonderful, wonderful papers. And all, I keep saying papers, I'm sorry, but wonderful news outlets that have done a great job. Our paper's a little different. We're a print paper, and we are creating a low barrier employment program, but we are also meeting our readers on the street where they are. Transit centers, in front of shopping centers, and other public spaces where our vendors can sell papers. We're meeting people where they are, and not everybody is online. And we're also bringing to us, to this project, experienced journalists and people who value Southern Arizona and Tucson in unique ways. I think, just to put it this way, we're bringing a lot of heart to this paper and this project. And what makes it unique? Well, we've got stories, as I said, written by experienced local journalists. It's a vendor-sold project that creates dignified income for folks. And it's journalism rooted in lived experiences and part of living in this wonderful desert city. Here's the QR code for the advisory board application. Meeting is coming up August 20th. If you want to be involved and join us, fill out that application, and we'd appreciate having you on board, that's for sure. And I'm excited about this first meeting. There's a big agenda and lots for us to do. And look at this sweet, sweet slide. So, newspapers, street newspapers, 101. I love that curbside cover. It just yells Alt Weekly. Love that cover so much. There's Real Change in the middle, celebrating their diversity in Seattle. And then ground cover. I love it because it shows you another thing that street newspapers do all over, where you celebrate and feature your vendors. And so they're letting people know, if you want to learn more about Vincent Power, to go to that page, and he's a vendor. I think that's at heart with this project too, with our vendors, is that you get to know people who are unhoused or in other difficult situations that many of us would find challenging. You get to know those folks better than you do otherwise. And I think it's an opportunity for us to change the way we look at unhoused folks, how we look at poverty in our community. I think this is something that the street newspaper can help with. So let me give you an idea of our vendor program, and one of the things that we would be raising funds for. So when we come, we've got this project. Let's bring the hands together. We've got this great project. On one side is quality journalism and a sustainable newsroom with great work happening over here in this corner. On the other side is the vendor program, which is in many cases the heart of the street newspaper. And the vendors are the folks who you'll see out there selling our paper. So they'll go out with a reflector vest and with their stack of papers that they've been given for each issue, week to week, and then maybe a tote bag to hold those papers and other things they need for their selling, to help them, waters, whatever they need, and maybe a laminated QR code so people can make their purchase digitally. So lots of things to think about, what vendors need. Did I say lanyards and badges? Hopefully I did. So when you come in as a vendor, you come in for orientation and training, with us sending you to places that we've already built relationships with. They're small businesses, shopping centers, public spaces that we feel are safe, welcoming, friendly. And you take your first stack, you go out there and you sell papers. A vendor in some models, this is how it may work. We haven't figured out what our model will be yet, but in some models, that vendor sells each issue for $2. 60 cents of those two go back to the paper, and the vendor pockets the remaining money that they sell of their sales. Where that money goes back, when it says it goes back to the newspaper, what it does is it likely goes to programming for the vendors, or for mutual aid communities that we might partner with, like Community on Wheels or the Amphi Mutual Aid Group. That might be one facet of it. That 60 cents per issue is not going to go back to build our sustainable newsroom, right? That would be through grants and through fundraising. That the newsroom is separate from that in the sense. But money that we raise through the sales of the paper go back to vendors through these other programs. Still working on the details of it, but just to give you an idea of how that could look like. Now, I'm going to ask that you be a little patient with me, because I'm going to share a video with you, and hopefully you're going to get some good stuff out of it, and a better understanding of street papers and its purpose.
Here I am, Dumpster D, live in Portland, Oregon. And we are talking about, the Street Roots paper, which I just dropped. Ta-da!
I came here from a flood from Houston. Lost my apartment. Me and my sister both. So we came here. I heard about Street Roots because we were outside in the cold. All the shelters were full. But they helped me to bring these papers out so that I could make money.
I've been a vendor for about 1.5 years now. I'd considered selling it before, but I didn't think, I'm very good at rejection. But I had no other source of income once the pandemic hit. So I just started selling the paper, and I found I actually enjoy it.
Dumpster D and Karen sell the Street Roots newspaper in the city of Portland in Oregon, one of 28 so-called street papers in the United States. Street Roots is a publication about, and in part by, current and former homeless or unhoused individuals, and it aims to change the face and reputation of homelessness in the city.
Street Roots has been around for almost 25 years, and we focus on investigative journalism, which is a real investment for papers to make, but we believe it's very important, because if we're trying to take on systems that are failing people, we need to go deeper. Street papers are really important at creating relationships between housed and unhoused people. Folks start to build a kind of knowledge about each other that then can transfer into this larger understanding of the predicament in our cities.
By providing investigative journalism, coupled with voices of people with lived experience and unique perspectives from the streets, we're able to offer a really unique snapshot of homelessness and housing, but also a lot of the issues that intersect with those realities.
What sets street papers apart is that they offer a means of income to vendors who would otherwise have to ask strangers for money. But they also give unhoused people a space where their voices are actually heard. Street Roots newsroom, like many other street papers, is mostly made up of professional journalists. But many of their 200 sellers also frequently contribute content, providing perspectives that regular reporters cannot.
Street Roots has had this tagline for those who cannot afford free speech for our entire existence. And that really gets at the fact that people in poverty do not have a large enough voice in our society, in our policy making that actually impacts their lives. We actually run a little journalism school for people on the streets, and we really work hard to bring people across housing status, and that includes in our newsroom.
I've been had a lot of problems, difficulties with addiction, like 35 years deep addiction. And so I like to write about what I see as an area that needs improvement in the community, right? Like the fentanyl epidemic, the process of applying for affordable housing, how does that work? So I have experience in all that area, so I just write about something that I see that needs improved.
Some of the main big papers here in the US, the New York Times or the LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, a lot of these newsrooms rely on the voices of officials when covering the issue. Maybe they'll get one line from an advocate. Many of the articles in these street papers provide op-eds, firsthand experiences, people experiencing the shelter, the criminal legal system, and giving folks who have no clue of how people are experiencing these systems a firsthand outlook.
By putting out the word on the street, these papers help make up for some of the shortcomings of the mainstream media on issues of inequality. Stereotypes relating to addiction, mental health, a lack of context on the systemic failures, all contribute to the impression so many people have that when it comes to unhoused people, they only have themselves to blame.
There's countless ways into how people can ultimately become homeless. We cover indigenous affairs, we cover racism, or just all kinds of social inequities that take place. And I think if people gain a better understanding of how all these things tie in, then you can better understand how it is that systems have failed people rather than people on the streets have failed themselves.
I had a poem in last week's paper that were not stereotypes, cliches, or caricatures, and if you talk to us, you'll find that out. And there's people that they see the problems with homelessness as far as like garbage on the streets and everything. I just tell them, you talk to me, you can see, I'm not one of the people that contribute any of that. I don't throw dirty needles on the street.
I think sometimes where the media gets it wrong is they're covering the play-by-play of the crisis that's unfolding on the streets without providing any historical context of why there are so many people experiencing homelessness in the United States, and also what ways that we can be able to solve the crisis.
The second aspect that the mainstream media consistently get wrong is the level of social welfare support that is provided. There's a widespread belief that the issue isn't that the state is not providing help and care, but that individuals are choosing to resist it.
So our main story this week is about a bill going through the state legislature right now.
Street papers are not just out to change perceptions, but also the politics around homelessness. In 2019, Street Roots advocated for a rethink of Portland's public safety policies, tapping into their vendors' knowledge to change how police respond to emergency calls involving houseless people. Now, when a non-criminal incident is reported, health and social workers rather than police get sent out, saving the council millions in police resources and those involved from needless arrest.
Locally, for the last 5 years more, over 50% of all the arrests in Portland have been of unhoused people. That's just completely a system out of whack. And a lot of the arrests are about crimes of homelessness, right? Being trespassing, being in public spaces, doing the daily things of survival in public spaces. So we really took that knowledge, and our newspaper rolled out a special edition where we put our minds to a brand new system. And we fought very hard to get this to be a city system, and we succeeded.
The Portland Street Response, that's a great example of where street papers were able to marry journalism and their advocacy to be able to create systemic change in the community. And there are countless examples of how street papers have played a role in helping save people's housing from budget cuts, or how they're helping drive education around particular policies that affect the poor.
I speak with people in City Hall. I speak with service providers. They read these articles, they read these issues, but also being able to post these stories on places like Twitter or Facebook has drawn attention to mainstream journalists who will then contact the group and cover the story, and has led to what they believe is an expansion of their influence. It's given them a huge edge as an advocacy outlet.
The line between journalism and activism, between reporting on unhoused people and advocating for them, can get blurry. When we put that to Street Roots, the executive director told us that there is a separation between their editorial and advocacy, and that every news organization has an agenda. Street papers are on a mission to put a roof over people's head, which, as far as agendas go, isn't too bad.
We often get a lot of vendors who have joined Street Roots unhoused, and we get to see them ultimately become housed, and it's nothing like seeing the joy of them being able to relish in that moment of bringing their house keys to the Street Roots office to let us know, hey, I no longer have to stay on the streets.
Basically, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. It got me in my home. I've been there 5 years, and I've been doing the papers 5 years.
Oh, neighbor.
Because the customers still want me to do it. I love the customers, and they like us.
Thanks for watching.
Okay. Of course, now, I have to get us out of share and all that wonderful thing with the technology being my friend for a change. Yeah. Well, I hope that was inspiring for you. I know when I first saw it after the campaign kickoff, I was like, I gotta help more people understand what a street paper is and what it's capable of doing. And I think that video really gets that across. So, funding our street newspaper. So we've talked about the GoFundMe and how that's moving forward, hoping for more donations to help us seed the paper. At the end of the month, we'll do the filing for our nonprofit status once we have a name and so forth with our advisory board. And that's going to help us with fundraising at a different level, applying for grants and fundraising where people find it helpful that we have a nonprofit status and so forth. So looking forward to those aspects. Please continue to share the GoFundMe. We still need that seed money. We'd love to have a few more $1,000 in our pockets there so we can possibly print some early issues to help celebrate the street this project. We'll see where we go. Okay, the grand to-do list. I feel like I've got to control my rambling, right? But this to-do list should probably not really show it to you, because then it gives you an idea of what my notebook is like, right? But we talked about this. We're doing the GoFundMe, recruiting for our advisory board, and the name of the paper, and nonprofit status, and possibly building partnerships with organizations like COW or Amphi Mutual Aid. We've got to pick a date for our first issue and so forth. And we're going to try and get this paper printed as local as possible. If you heard that the Republic is closing its press, it's going to make it really difficult, and is making it difficult for other papers that are still in print. Many of them were getting printed at the Republic. We also want to get robust and and celebratory, really, vendor program together as we bring people through training and creating a family within our paper of our vendors and our journalists. A lot of supplies are going to be needed for a good vendor program. And reaching out to artists for cover art, that's going to be fun, and additional columnists and journalists who want to be part of this, poets and other writers. The one thing that we've talked about is like the back page, what can you do with the back page? We've talked about like doing something different with classified ads, this idea of a Tucson time bank. I've seen this in other cities where you've got a lawyer who needs a landscaper and a landscaper who needs a lawyer and that kind of stuff, and you find each other through the Tucson time bank, and it is love. That's one idea we have. There are others out there. We are looking into advertising and sponsorships, but still thinking out loud with each other on how that would look. This is the big draft budget. Really, it's just a couple of quarters represented here. But startup costs, administrative costs, publishing and printing costs. We think we want to start off with a circulation of 5,000, a 12-page paper. We've talked about doing a monthly and then going to bi-monthly and then weekly, but depending on how successful we are in our fundraising efforts, something to think about is that a weekly paper is going to be far more advantageous for our vendors. Being able to sell a new paper every week is going to be more money in their pocket. And so that's why I'm not always so keen on this idea of staying monthly for a while or even bi-weekly. Outreach and events, fundraising events, and some supplies for that. And personnel, right now looking at, can we do like a three personnel, like 2 co-editors who are also writers, and maybe a vendor manager, vendor coordinator. And we want that side of the paper to be strong, and also lifting up a really viable vendor program too. So all these things are important to us, but those vendors certainly are even more so. We're coming to the end. Thank you. Questions, you can reach out to me, please. That QR code will take you to their GoFundMe campaign. Feel free to share that. Please share that. You can reach out to me at mari.herreras@gmail.com or on my Instagram at TucsonAZMari, or shoot me an email, not an email, a text message. That's what the kids are calling it these days, right? 520-834-2155. We want your questions. Hopefully I've explained how the whole vendor program side works. If we need to do more on that, I'm looking forward to it, actually. But really, this is an exciting journey, and I am really hopeful that we can make this happen. I look forward to maybe towards the end of the month announcing staff that have come on board, what our name is, or introducing you to our advisory board members, and just continuing to make this a reality. Tucson, we're really vulnerable right now in many ways, and I think that a street newspaper is going to be an important part of our conversations on inequity and truth-telling, and also community building. And who knew, journalism, it can make that happen. Look forward to talking with you more, and thanks for watching this. Take care. Bye-bye.